So we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Karen King, and this is the panel that's going to focus on rigorous coursework. And I think you'll find it an interesting set of presentations, and then a chance for us to have some hopefully very interesting conversations about the next generation STEM high schools and what that means for rigorous coursework. So how we're going to structure the session, the three panelists will share their insights from the perspective of research and practice, and then and that'll be about 30 minutes, and then all the participants, everybody in the room, will discuss how these projects and your own work help us elaborate research challenges, add to or extend research challenges, and refine or better specify some research challenges. And I have some notes that I'll share after their presentations about what came from the earlier PI session. So the panelists are Barbara Means, who is the director for the Center for Technology and Learning at SRI International, Bill Hook, who is the principal of the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences, and Kim Cherry, who is the deputy chief of STEM for the District of Columbia Public Schools. And we're going to start with Barbara. So I'm going to move out of your way.
Thanks very much, Karen. So I think of this as kind of part two. Hopefully some of you heard the presentation I gave this morning. I talked a little bit, as did Sharon Lynch, about our work with inclusive STEM high schools and what those really constitute. But if you'll remember, a really important part of them was a rigorous set of courses that would prepare students for college STEM majors if they choose to actually major in a STEM field. And one of the things I just want to remind us from the research is that taking advanced courses in high school, that is advanced courses in science and math, is strongly predictive both of college completion and of entry into STEM majors. We have a lot of work showing that. And we also know that on-time completion of a STEM college major requires readiness for calculus the freshman year. Otherwise, you're going to need an additional year of undergraduate work. Many students who are interested in STEM careers are actually unaware of these requirements, particularly students from families that are first-generation college goers or don't have access to kind of a network of STEM professionals. Low-income African American and Latino students are underrepresented in advanced math and science classes in high school, as I talked about this morning, to a pretty dramatic extent. In addition, we know that there are not only gaps in prior preparation for these courses, but also some of the socio-emotional factors that people have been talking about, issues such as stereotype threat or not feeling that you belong in a certain kind of class, seem to contribute to underrepresentation of these students in advanced classes. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have been studying for some years now inclusive STEM-focused high schools, and these are high schools that want to prepare students for a STEM college major if they're interested, but unlike the selective STEM schools we've had for years, since not too long after the turn of the century, these schools take students on the basis of interest rather than measured prior aptitude, and they target underrepresented groups to have high representation of these students in their schools. We've been studying the impacts of attending such a school using propensity score matching and comparing outcomes first at the 12th grade level, and then later on, now we're starting to look post-secondary, for students who attend these inclusive STEM-focused schools in 2 states so far. We have data, and we're starting in Ohio. North Carolina and Texas, we have 39 schools between the 2 states. We're comparing outcomes to those of students similar demographic backgrounds, very, very similar prior achievement, that is 8th grade achievement scores in both science and mathematics are equivalent, and looking at what happens to them, both in terms of 12th grade measures. We're available from state administrative data, from survey-based measures we get from the students themselves about things like their STEM interests, and self-efficacy and interest in STEM careers. So you can read more about it. We have an article that came out in JARST earlier this year with the North Carolina findings, and on our website we have information pooling both North Carolina and Texas and looking at subgroup analyses. But we find that students in the inclusive STEM high schools are more likely to have taken pre-calculus or calculus. They take more advanced science courses, and they're more likely to have had an engineering course in high school. So they are getting more rigorous coursework. And one of the other things we find from the student survey results is a really different kind of description, not just of the name of the course they took, but if you ask about what was the instruction like, we see that the science and math courses that the students took were more likely to call on advanced skills, that is analysis, reasoning. They make greater use of project-based learning, and they do more integration of multiple STEM subjects. So it appears they really are getting a different kind of coursework. And so the main thing I want to focus on in just the little bit of time that I have today is some of the work we're just starting to do, and these are both preliminary studies, but I think they're kind of exciting, trying to address the longer question, which is really our ultimate question. Does this advanced course taking that you get in the ISHS and the cultural experience and then the network that you form, does that really make a difference? Can we see some impact if we look longer term? So that's where we're starting to move with our study, and we will have, in the future, we're just starting to connect to the higher education databases, which take a while for the data to accumulate. You not only have to wait the 2 years for the high school senior to become a college sophomore if they went directly to college, but then you have to wait another year or two for the data to get in the state higher education data system before you can analyze those outcomes. But in the meantime, we've done some smaller scale studies that I'm going to talk about today. One of these was in North Carolina, and the other one was in Texas. So in North Carolina, we had, as I said, 12th grade students from inclusive STEM high schools and comparison schools had the same kind of 8th grade achievement and as close as we could get on demographics while holding the achievement constant. And we had asked on our 12th grade survey, we actually asked them, we said there will be a study 2 years hence, we would like you to be part of it. If you're willing to be please give us contact information. We asked for themselves and then also someone else who would know where they were in 2 years. And so we used that information then to invite students to take a survey 2 years after high school graduation. And we offered them gift cards in return for doing this. And we tried to create kind of a sense of community around it. Our online website, we had profiles from students who agreed to be profiled. And we tried to really kind of tie them into the study with postcards in between the end of their high school year and doing the post-secondary survey. We did pretty well on the ISHS graduates. We got 71% of those we had contact information for responding to our survey. Less well on the comparison school graduates, 54%. And that was hard work, and I think part of the reason it was harder work was because our ability to kind of create a network of students who knew each other and were in contact with each other was easier in the smaller inclusive STEM high schools than it was in the comparison schools, which were somewhat larger. But having said that, one of the things we also analyzed was looking at all the students who responded in 12th grade and then the 12th grade survey responses of students who responded to the post-secondary survey. As you might expect, students who were more interested in STEM in 12th grade were more likely to respond to the post-secondary survey. Same differences in both the comparison and ISHS groups. And so to the extent that we have a smaller response rate among comparison school graduates, I think we could make the inference that if there is some bias in responses, that is, the more successful ones are responding post-secondary, that would be a larger issue with the comparison school graduates. So that would bias against finding an inclusive STEM high school effect. Another thing it's important to see is just the nature of these students. So these are the post-secondary respondents, and these schools were heavily African American, the inclusive STEM high schools in North Carolina. And so the comparison school students we matched to the inclusive STEM high school students were also heavily African American, and actually they were majority female too, which is kind of interesting. So one of the things we found was that there wasn't a difference between the two groups in the likelihood of them being enrolled in some post-secondary institution 2 years hence, but the inclusive STEM high school graduates were more likely to be in a four-year college, and that was a significant difference. And then we also have data here on some of the other important variables, having declared a STEM major. And for the ISHS graduates, and again, this is probably an overrepresentation because we only had a 71% response rate, but almost 47% of those students had declared a major in STEM. And we didn't say, did you declare a STEM major? We asked, what was your major? And then we classified the ones that were STEM, compared to 32% in the comparison schools. The number of STEM college courses completed was significantly higher for the inclusive STEM high school students, but also the number of non-STEM courses they have completed. So they've just taken more college courses, and they were also more likely to be very interested, as they self-describe themselves, as interested in a science career. So this is preliminary data. It's suggestive, but I think it's exciting enough, certainly, that we're going in to work with the larger administrative data set where we can look at all the students. In Texas, we did something a little bit different. In Texas, we decided we would focus in on, we wanted to get student voice. And so we focused in on members of the high school graduating class of 2014 who we had surveyed as 12th graders. And we picked out those that said they would be the first college goers in their family. That is, neither parent had a bachelor's degree is how we defined it, and that they were very interested in a career of STEM. So whether they were in a comparison school or an inclusive STEM high school, they're all first generation, very interested in a STEM career at the end of high school. And we did one-on-one phone interviews where we asked about their college going history and experiences, their experiences particularly in STEM courses with their major field of study, how their plans had changed or stayed the same. And then perceptions, we tried to dig into how well did your high school prepare you for these experiences you had in college. And I'll just give you a minute to look at some of the excerpts from these interviews. And what comes out in them came out, even though this was a very small sample, it was only 15 of each. What really came out was that the inclusive STEM high school students said they described their high school coursework as being harder and as having better prepared them for college. And more things in their high school were in a college way, in the words of one of the students. The comparison school graduates on the left felt that they got a big surprise when they got to college STEM courses, and they did not feel well prepared. They also described, coming down to some of that socio-emotional part of this that we've talked about before, if you look at the lower left-hand side, talking about the math and science teachers, they seem to have a you get it, you don't get it attitude. They are set in their ways. They explain it, and if you don't get it, you just don't get it. And this left the students very vulnerable when they hit difficulties in their college classes. So one of the things we found was there was a lot more consistency for the inclusive STEM high school students. They were not only more likely to be in four-year colleges in Texas, but they were also more likely to have declared a major and stayed in that major, whereas we saw more disruption of the college experience among the comparison school students. So I just want to come to the conclusion that I think we see the importance of the rigorous courseware for preparation for STEM majors in college, and that really to expand the diversity of STEM professions, as we talked about this morning, really means we need to get more students from underrepresented groups into high schools with both high expectation and supports for working in advanced math and science courses. So really those courses are very important. Having people enthusiastic about STEM is necessary but not sufficient. And I certainly think, and we're working to find out and test the assumption that inclusive STEM high schools are a promising strategy for doing this. So thank you very much.
Can I ask a quick question? Did you do any analysis on the kinds of teachers teaching the rigorous courses? I mean, here we are. So, were they exceptional teachers teaching those courses, or were they?
Yeah. The only thing we know is in terms of the degrees that they had. So, and that really varied between states. So in North Carolina, they actually were not more likely to have advanced degrees in the science field. In Texas, I believe they were. So there was some variation in there. But I think my sense that they were exceptional teachers came from what the students reported in terms of the kind of instruction they got, and the students described their teachers as believing all students can learn, treating all students fairly, really caring about their success. And I think combining the high expectations and that social emotional support, I think makes them exceptional teachers.
So next we'll have Bill Hook from Chicago High School of Agricultural Sciences.
Hi, good afternoon. I can assure you in my control group at my school that we have all exceptional teachers. I can absolutely assure you. Is this the touch? Ironically, we're at STEM, and I don't know how to work a laptop. There we go. So about 4 or 5 years ago, I got a call from Sharon Lynch, and she said, she explained the study she was starting and mentioned that she'd like to have the school as a part of the study as inclusive STEM schools. And I said, listen, I'm extremely honored, but with all due respect, we're not a STEM school, we're an agricultural school. And she says, well, don't all your students take 4 years of math? I said, yeah. And she said, well, don't all your students take 4 years of science? I said, yeah. And she said, aren't there, do you have animal science and food science? I said, I think you're a STEM school. I said, I guess we are, and I guess we are. But let me give you a little background to the school. We're Chicago Public High School, and we're on a 78.8 acre farm. It's been owned by Chicago Public Schools since the 1870s, and the family that leased it from the city for 100 years moved out of town in 1980, and they had to decide what they were going to do with it. They were just going to sell the land, build houses, and be done. But the community wanted to keep the farm. So in a compromise, they said, well, let's keep the farm, but add a school. So in 1985, we opened up our doors as the Chicago High School for Agricultural Sciences, which is ironic because I was at high school the next high school north from where I'm at now, and I was a senior in high school. As all seniors know everything, I said, why are they building an ag school? In 1985. Willie Nelson's down in Champaign, Illinois, singing for Farm Aid. It's a dying industry. What are they doing for building an ag school? 30 years later, here I am, the principal of the ag school, and we were actually asked by Willie Nelson to have our students work Farm Aid down in Chicago this last September, and we sold our beef sticks that we have from our cattle that we raise. We sold our zucchini bread that the students made in the food science lab from our zucchini that we grow out in the crop. So rigorous coursework. I think you've heard kind of a theme today. Rigorous coursework is rigor with support. That's what we have at our school. Again, one of the two best things I think about our school is, first, we're a public school, we're a magnet school. There's no criteria to get in. Anybody can apply, anybody can attend. It's a random lottery. We actually have over 3,000 applications for 180 freshman spots every year. You're thinking, wow, there's that much demand for agricultural education in Chicago? No. There's a demand for good, safe schools, and that's what we are. We have a reputation of being as a good, safe school. So parents apply for their students to go to ag. They have no idea. We're the farm school to them. They have no idea what ag is, but they come to school because it's a good, safe school. we have to first dispel the myths of what ag is not, and kind of teach them what ag is, and they really kind of buy into it. They spend time, but every student who comes in from over 60 feeder schools every year, all students take a full college prep curriculum and 8 courses in career and technical education. In most schools, most comprehensive schools, some of your STEM classes or your CT classes are all electives. And electives by definition are accessible to some and inaccessible to others. What we do is we build a curriculum where it's 100% for everybody. It's CTE and it's college prep. So 4 years of English, 4 years of math, 4 years of science, 3 years of social studies, 2 years of foreign language, 2 years of fine arts, 2 years of PE. There's actually a mandate in the state of Illinois that all students in high school take 4 years of PE now. I went down to Springfield and I petitioned the Illinois State Board of Education to allow our school to have a waiver, and they gave us a waiver. I explained that our students are out in the summer. We bale probably over 3,000 bales of hay every year. They get plenty of exercise, believe me. But the 8 courses in agriculture that the students take, they end up in the pathways. I'll explain the pathways in just a second. But as you can see, we have honors and AP level courses from freshman year through senior year. If students can access that, that's great. We also have one section in each class that has intensive support. It's a smaller class. Our honors classes have 32, 34 students. We call it a prep class. It's a smaller class, only about 20, 22 students in those classes. But it's the same curriculum, a little different pace. The same teachers teach all freshman English. Same teachers teach all sophomore geometries, all juniors are taught by the same physics teacher. So it's really consistency of curriculum, consistency of experience. And we have AP level courses. We have dual credit courses. I, in fact, myself taught a dual credit course last year. I told my AP if I decided to do it again, punch me in the face. I loved it. It was the greatest thing I've done in 20 years. But preparing for one class is like preparing for 5 classes. It was just really a little too much. But we have dual credit, and the nicest thing is that we have, again, honors, dual credit, AP, but we have articulated credit. So we have 6 agricultural pathways. So students, after their sophomore year, they take 2 classes freshman year, Ag History and Ag Careers and Leadership, introduces them to the FFA. And then sophomore year, they take Ag Communications, and they take an Ag Survey course where they spend 30 days in each of the 6 pathways. And our 6 pathways are Ag Mechanics and Technology, Ag Finance, Horticulture and Plant Science, Food Science, Animal Science, and we just transitioned to a new pathway for biotechnology. So those are our 6 pathways. So the students spend 30 days in each of those pathways, get an idea what they're about, and then they select the pathway for their junior, senior year. Now in each year, they spend 2 periods a day in that pathway. They spend a period in academics and a period in applications. And every one of those 6 pathways, we have articulation agreements with all the land-grant universities and all the 1890 schools where the credits that they earn in those classes, they have an articulated credit when they go there. So U of I is our largest feeder. When our students go to U of I, if they're going into food science, they already have their articulated credit for Food Science 101. Animal science, same thing across the board. So that's the rigorous curriculum, and it's what happens in the classroom, obviously, what matters in terms of the rigor. I'm going to hit right there. But it's what happens outside the classroom that really matters. And we want to talk about, rigorous experience, not just rigorous curriculum, not just rigorous coursework, but rigorous opportunities. And our students are involved in opportunities during the day, after school, weekends, summer. Last week, our teachers came back to school. Our students just started this Tuesday. And I asked our students who had done things over the summer to come in and explain some of their experiences. And our teachers were just wowed. We had 2 groups go to Michigan State University for different camps. We have U of I takes our students to the RAP program, which is a research apprentice program. We had students go out to EPIC, which is Engineering Possibilities in College at Cal Poly. We had one student do a USDA internship at the University of Virgin Islands. We had actually a group of 12 students go out and do a cattle drive through Nebraska. They were going, I think, 10 days doing a cattle. Imagine 10 kids from the city, actually 12 kids from the city. They took the Amtrak train to Omaha to get picked up by these ranchers, and they took them out literally almost across the whole state of Nebraska on horses driving cattle. It was just, an absolute great experience. We had students work for APHIS and USDA this summer. That's an internship that goes on every year. Last summer we had a girl who went to the World Food Prize and ended up winning the Norman Borlaug intern. She spent her summer in India. So I mean, the students are just taking great advantage of all the opportunities we can provide them. These are students at a job shadow. All of our students are required to do 2 job shadows, one their junior year, one their senior year. A job shadow is at least a day spent in industry. This is at, used to be called Corn Products. Now it's called Ingredion, or one of our partners. They take a group of students once a year, and they set up labs for them. And actually what happened with this job shadow, it turned into an internship for some of our students, and some of our girls that attended the job shadow now have mentors within that company that are following them through high school and on through college. So those job shadow opportunities are huge. But again, it's the rigor in the classroom, but it's the rigor outside the classroom too. This is one of the biggest endeavors we do every year. It's the Chicago Flower and Garden Show, and it's a product between our ag, mechanics, and construction and our horticulture, plant science. The students get the space, and they get an idea what size it is. They make a footprint of that in our gym, so they know exactly how big it's going to be. They have to plan it out. They get into work groups. There's a group that does planning. There's a group that takes care of plants. There's a group that takes care of flowers. There's a group in the construction that takes care of all the hardscapes. Budget committee. The students do these committees. It isn't the teachers are just facilitators. The students do all the work, and it's a week long show down at Navy Pier, and our students are really it's you can't tell the school garden when you're walking through. People come by, they have no idea it's a school garden. We also have a booth there where we sell all of our products that we make and grow, and the students end up making about $5,000 or $6,000 a year from that. But again, the students run everything. We have a farm stand at school that's open during the summer. They run that. We generate between the booth, the farm stand, we have 45 beehives. We generate right around a ton of honey every year. And Eli's Cheesecake buys most of it. But with all that, we average about $70,000 a year coming in from that. And that money goes directly towards student opportunities. So when a student writes the application for EPIC at Cal Poly, Cal Poly will underwrite the cost of the camp. We'll pay the cost of the airfare. We do that for all those opportunities for the students, for college visits as well. Another example, this was this summer. Everything you see on campus, again, we have a 78-acre campus. We have horse shelters. We have a loafing shed for the cattle. We have chicken coops. These are pasture fences for the horses as well. We also breed standard bred horses. The students are responsible for caring for the foals when they're born. We had students this summer. A group of 4 students wrote a grant to the Illinois FFA, and they got a donation of boar semen, and they artificially inseminated 2 Berkshire gelds, and they're both due to deliver later this month. But this is just one of the projects. Again, the kids had to come in and they're required to work all summer between their freshman and sophomore year, and then students within their pathway have to identify a project that they want to work on. So these are some of the older students working on. This is a project that they had to do for their class. But I just told them we needed a pasture fence. They went out and they made the order. They walked out with the rolling tape. They figured out how they had to do the materials list. They had to come up with a budget. All they gave me was a sheet of paper from Home Depot that we need X number of 4x4s, X number of 2x6s, and I gave it to the clerk. She put it in, and it was delivered. And the students did it all. Those are just a typical project you'll see any time. And all the things we talk about, all the opportunities, all the informal learning opportunities, all the out of the classroom opportunities are made possible because of our advisory board. And our advisory board is just really not just instrumental in what we do, but we couldn't exist without them. Mark Schulman, president of Eli's Cheesecake, he's the chairman of our advisory committee. But we have Quaker Oats on there. We have Kraft Foods and Quaker Oats. They came out and they helped us plant. They donated oat seed and we planted it and we went to harvest it, and they weren't sure it was going to come up, so we didn't have a harvester. So we had to actually harvest by hand with our students 3 acres of oats. That's not easy. But we did it, and they took it all back, and they took it to the Iowa plant. They steel cut it, and they gave it back to our food science lab, and we've been making granola bars, all kinds of different recipes that the kids come up with. Again, Kraft Foods comes out. They do a major job shadows with us every year. They provide scholarships for our students if they're going into food science. The Illinois Harness Horseman Association, they're going to donate the horses that we breed. We just sold one at the state fair in August. So the rigor is in the classroom and it's in the curriculum, but the rigor is also outside the classroom. It's in those experiences that when they go off to college, and I was in that makers session earlier, and I think in STEM it's kind of it's the makers. The FFA motto is learn by doing, and I think our students here are kind of the doers, and you have to learn beyond the book. You have to learn beyond beyond the walls of the classroom. So I like to always say that standardized assessments measure what a student knows. I think Common Core is a little better now. I think Common Core measures what a student can do. We like to think at Ag we want to see what a student gets done, and again, the things that they're able to accomplish on their own and directed by themselves is pretty impressive. So I probably went over my 10 minutes, but once I start talking about my school, I can't stop. So we can talk more during questions.